Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Happy Pessimist Leftist. Abba and Preach did a video recently. It was a really good video commenting on tipping. And for those of you who don't know Abba and Preach, there's Preach right there on the left of this image. And I will put a link to this video in the description below. They did a very good job on this video, as always. But yeah, I'm going to get into it because I think it's a discussion that needs to be had more often about tipping, in America. So anyways, let's get into it. So the Uber Eats delivery guy in the video is crying because he's about to go homeless, he says. He then goes on to blame people who aren't tipping him enough for his financial problems. But I'm here to say it's not their fault you are going homeless. The issue is, shitty economics and shitty policy. But the issue is also individual choices. So I personally don't like tipping. To me, it creates dependency. And I think people deserve a living wage, which looks different depending on where you live in the country, in my opinion. Maybe a living wage means $15 an hour in a small town in the Midwest, but it might mean $25 an hour in a large city. And if you ask me, it should be tied to inflation, it should be adjusted to inflation. But what I don't agree with is, that national $15 an hour minimum wage nonsense. I think that doesn't go far enough. But anyways, so yeah, I'm not a fan of tipping, but we've all been conditioned to tip people here in America. It's been expected and it's become expected, of everyone. And, we've all been raised that way, right? That you need to tip and all of this, and it's rude not to tip. And I'm trying to deprogram myself from tipping people, but I still do it from time to time because it's hard. Since I've been doing it for many years, and sometimes I do like the person giving me good service, so I am often tempted and often still do give in to tipping. But yes, that's just something I'm trying to move away from. Now, I know that sounds a bit douchey, but it's your employer that should be paying you more, not me. It's not the job of other broke or low-income people to subsidize your shitty job. But that burden should be on the employers who can afford to pay you more, but just refuse to. Yes, I know it's harsh. It sounds kind of harsh, but no one is obligated to tip you well, let alone tip you at all. And that is their choice. Now, just to be clear, I am not pro banning tipping, but I am personally just against supporting a system that sustains tip dependency, right? Because it creates guys like this in the video, the guy on the right, crying. This guy literally said, and I'm more paraphrasing here, but this guy said something along the lines of, how hard is it to just give us an extra $5? Which almost sounds entitled to me and sounds pretty silly. Now, my reasons for wanting to no longer tip workers, or my reasons for moving away from that habit, are ironically similar reasons why Republicans want to cut welfare benefits, which I am against, by the way. Just to make that clear, I am against that. If anything, welfare, should be expanded in America, not cut, because it actually does help people get back on their own 2 feet. And that was me at one point, and I was very thankful and grateful for, government benefits. But conservatives argue that a strong welfare state will, cost too much money, does cost too much money. It will cause too much dependency on government handouts. This argument I disagree with, but their reasons for wanting to get rid of welfare are my reasons for not tipping. because unlike welfare benefits, I believe that tipping actually does create dependency. You know, tipping is essentially consumer handouts to employers, because now other low-wage workers are largely the ones subsidizing their servers' wages instead of companies paying their workers even just a minimum wage, let alone a living wage. Whenever you tip someone, a bartender, a waitress, you're essentially, or your Uber driver, you're essentially a welfare program for that person's employer, because you have taken on their burden for their staff, of providing for their staff, even though you yourself are likely in the same shitty financial situation they are in, as working class people. And that does keep people stagnant in shitty jobs, in my opinion, instead of helping them realize how fucked that situation is and that they should demand more, or at least get out of that situation and look for opportunities to earn more, I guess. But yeah, I mean, they should demand more, because it's valuable work. All work is good work. It should be valued and should be respected and treated humanely. So yeah, tipping shortchanges workers and inconveniences customers. And it makes customers feel like assholes for not tipping, because if they don't tip, your server might not have enough for groceries that day. How shitty is that? But why should treating workers humanely be on the customer's mind? That takes away from the overall customer experience, wouldn't you think? To put that burden onto them. That moral question should be on the mind of the employer, and on them only, if you ask me. And it puts the blame on other regular people for not tipping or not tipping well, while also drawing attention away from greedy companies who are really at fault here. So now, as far as potential solutions go to this, here's what I would have to say. These are just ideas to consider. So one idea I have is broader and more difficult, but technically not impossible, and involves a movement of people. And the other idea is individual and much easier to apply, and I myself have done this. So you don't want to be overworked and underpaid, right? So for one, don't take up a job that depends on tips. But obviously there's more. I'm going to where I'm going with this. If you are already in that position, of being in a shitty job like that where you need tips, if you're already in that situation and you currently feel stuck, do everything you can to get out of it and work towards getting another job while you work in whatever shitty industry in the meantime, and have a game plan to get out. And, what does that game plan look like? Or what could that game plan look like? Well, maybe consider joining a strong labor union. And I have to emphasize a strong labor union, because there's a lot of strong, good labor unions out there that really take care of their members. And then there's a lot of weak, shitty unions. So that's one idea. Sorry about that. Excuse me. So the other possibility is go back to school and get a marketable degree in something that society values, not something that you value necessarily, because if you do that, you might end up with a shitty degree, and you might not end up with a good lucrative career. So, make sure you get a degree in something that society values, something marketable. Because if you ask me, there needs to be a more pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of leftism, and a more personal responsibility kind of leftism. Because people on the left have become just sit on your ass crybabies that like to blame those in power, and are critical of those in power, and for good reason, but don't want to take action and do much of anything about it. They just want to bitch, moan, and complain. Now, if your response, if your response is to student debt, to getting a degree is student debt, what about student debt? Like if I take that route, I don't want to owe tens of thousands or maybe even hundreds of thousands in student debt. Well, that's a separate video. But there are solutions to that. But that's a very valid question. But yeah, that's just another option, is to go back to school. If you have the means. And if you don't have the means, there are ways around that, which again, different discussion. But also, if you live in a major city, move to another city and or state where taxes and the cost of living is lower. Get the hell out of New York, San Francisco Bay Area, or LA, etc. That's what I did, and I'm glad I did it. I know a lot of people, particularly young people, people like millennials or younger, they want to be in cities, major cities. It's fun, it's cool, there's a lot to do, there's a lot to see, it's exciting, there's always something going on. So, I get it, but you're just going to have to understand what it means to live there, because you're going to be bitching about rent, and you're going to be bitching about this, and you're going to be bitching about that. And so, yeah, just know what that means before getting into it. And yeah. So, and another option is for workers, like the guy in the Ab and Preach video, who are sick of working shitty jobs that depend on tips, is, this guy, is to band together and push for a new labor movement and unionize across industries, across the country, but no one wants to, no one wants to do that. No one's got the time to do anything like that, or the energy, or the discipline. But they still have time to work multiple jobs, apparently, and bitch about them. Okay. So do you know the amount of sacrifice and effort it took for the labor rights movement to win us things like, the weekend and worker benefits and protections that we take for granted, today? Do you know how much effort, hard work that took? It takes work, people. It takes effort. It takes getting off of your ass, all right? So the way I see it is there are two options for most people. Either put in the time and effort to improve your individual situation, right? Whether it means joining a labor union or going back to school to pull yourself out of poverty, right? Either improve your individual's situation or put in the time to fight against crony capitalism and neoliberalism by, joining unions, forming unions, supporting unions, and starting a new labor movement, joining or starting general strikes. Hell, you could even do both, actually. You can take both routes if you want. But stop waiting for politicians, and I'm talking Democrats and Republicans. Stop waiting for politicians and the government to come around and save you. They're all bought off. It's time we help ourselves, whether it's collectively or individually, whatever path you want. In my opinion, those are the two most effective routes you can take to change, your situation, your reality. But bitching and complaining about not getting enough tips at work and blaming other poor people for not tipping enough and other stupid shit like that will never get you far. I say this because I've tried to, and I've tried to unionize my fellow coworkers at dead-end jobs. But people always made excuses to not try anything. And they didn't want to unionize. And a lot of people, they didn't even know what a union was, and they didn't know what unions were all about. And they didn't want to know. When I tried to explain it to them, they didn't even want to know. So I said, okay, fuck it. And I tried. So I turned my attention inward and I decided to just improve my own economic situation individually. You know, I did this instead. And guess what? Now I'm better off for it. But it also took effort, you know, and there was an adjustment period and it wasn't easy. But I moved out of California into another state and now I live in a more affordable city, and my low income ass qualified for government student grants. So I am on track to getting a bachelor's degree in finance while, you know, all while being smart and responsible with my money and building up my savings and credit for future goals. So I was born and raised in San Francisco, California, but I'm now happily living in another city and state where housing is much cheaper. And I don't bitch about money nearly as much anymore. Um, so if people want to improve either society's economic situation or even just improve their own situation, they need to stop playing victim or they will stay victims. All right. And and you need to put in the work. Either route you take, it's got to take work and discipline to either, you know, to either start a movement or create your own personal revolution that puts you on track to get yourself out of poverty and out of shitty jobs that depend on tipping. I'm not saying it's easy. Again, it was hard at first and it got easier and there was an adjustment period. And I'm not even where I want to be yet. Ultimately, I still have a long road ahead, but I'm on track. And it's still not super easy, but it's doable, and I'm on my way. But all the bitching and no action that you see a lot on the left, that's not the best option for you. That is the worst possible thing you can do for yourself is bitch, moan, and complain. And there is a lot of that on the left. There's a lot of bitching on the left, not a lot of action, even on an individual level to improve their situation. There's not a lot of that, you know. That's the worst thing you can do, and I can guarantee you that. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and have a good one.